Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have some people still rolling in here, so we'll get started in just a minute, but appreciate you joining us for today's conversation about sexual harassment prevention. Okay, let's get started. Good morning, everybody. I'm Ben Bingle. I'm the director of the DeKalb County Nonprofit Partnership at the DeKalb County Community Foundation. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar on recognizing, reporting, and preventing sexual harassment. This training is a collaborative effort between DCNP, the DeKalb Chamber of Commerce, Genoa Area Chamber of Commerce, Safe Passage, Sandwich Area Chamber of Commerce, and Sycamore Chamber of Commerce. So we appreciate the partnership of all of those different organizations in helping to make this possible. A few quick housekeeping items before we get started. Today's session is being recorded, and we're going to send that recording and the slide deck to all registered attendees by email. Certificates of participation will also be emailed, and we plan to do that by December 12th to those who are attending the webinar live right now. If you're watching the recording later, you're welcome to do so, but we won't issue certificates for those of you who do access it later. You'll need to document and track your completion internally. If you're watching this as a group on one of your devices and anyone did not register individually, please email us at dcmp@dekalbccf.org so we can include them on the certificate list. I'll drop that address in the chat as well so you have that readily available. Everyone is muted at the moment, but feel free to use the Q&A and chat features that are built into Teams. We'll save some time at the end for questions that come up. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Beth Gagnon. Beth earned a bachelor's from Loras College with a focus on sociology and public relations. With a background in advocacy and nonprofit systems, Beth is passionate about educating and assisting populations that are underserved. She's worked on many local boards and committees to benefit the community she grew up in, and currently is pursuing a master's of public administration from Northern Illinois University. Welcome, Beth. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, everybody. So yes, my name is Beth from Safe Passage, and today we will be going over sexual harassment prevention, and just making our workplaces safer for everyone. So before we hop into it, I do want to talk a little bit about the services at Safe Passage. I'm sure many of you on here are probably familiar with Safe Passage or have heard of us before, but just if you're not super aware, Safe Passage is DeKalb County's only domestic violence and sexual assault crisis center. And we have a variety of free and confidential services that we provide to people in DeKalb County. We have an emergency shelter and transitional housing. If you guys didn't see exciting news, we actually had a soft launch, a groundbreaking ceremony on our new shelter location in DeKalb, which will like triple the amount of space in our shelter, which is very exciting. We have counseling services. We have legal and medical advocacy. We have professional training and prevention education, which is what I'm doing right now. We have abuse intervention services, case management, and 24/7 crisis support. That 24/7 crisis support is through our hotline or text line, which is on the image under our logo. And those again are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All of our victim or survivor services are completely free and confidential. The only services we have that are not free would be for the offenders, which is our abuse intervention services. Usually those are court ordered or court mandated. But all professional trainings are free, prevention education is free. So if you guys ever need some kind of education, or maybe you are on today and you have a couple other coworkers who were not able to make it, who need a training, you're welcome to reach out to me, and we can even do another session for free. So to hop into our presentation, I just want to kind of give a bit of a trigger warning. We are going to talk about different types of sexual harassment. And that can be upsetting to some individuals, especially if this is maybe something that you are familiar with or have experienced, or maybe even if you know someone who has experienced this who's close to you. This can be a little upsetting. So you are more than welcome to take a break, take a breather, turn your camera off, things like that if you need to, in order to be able to proceed with the rest of the presentation. Our objectives for today is definitions in the law. So I definitely want to talk about the definitions of sexual harassment and kind of the laws surrounding that. I'm going to give some examples of sexual harassment in the workplace. The law is not always very digestible. Sometimes it is worded in a way that is not always the most comprehensive. And so I am going to go over some specific examples to kind of help foster understanding. And then lastly, we're going to talk about reporting avenues and opportunities to report. We want to make sure that everyone knows how to be safe. And if these things do unfortunately happen, we want to make sure that everyone knows what to do to help report and stay safe. So what we're going to do, I did hit share sound, so we will see if that works. But I am going to play a little video here. And this video is just a very general, oh, I'm not going to play the video. That's okay. Me and Ben were talking about how technology is very hit or miss, as are the videos are very hit or miss usually. So, that video was just a very general overview of what sexual harassment can look like in the workplace. But lucky for you all, I know what it looks like, and so we can already talk about it with or without the video. You have what some might call an expert, so I can help us out with fostering that understanding with or without the video. Okay. So, what we do know is that 38% of women, 14% of men, 22% of LGBTQ people, and 35% of trans or non-binary people have reported experiencing sexual harassment or sexual violence in the workplace. And this is according to studies from the National Sexual Violence Resource Center and a study done by Sears in 2024. And so what really shocks me about this is that this really is something that affects everybody. The fact that like a third of your women coworkers or a fifth of your men coworkers or a third or a quarter of your LGBTQIA plus coworkers are possibly experiencing sexual harassment in the workplace, that's a lot of people. We all have to work. We all have to make money to live. And we all need to be able to do that in order to survive. And the fact that in our workplaces we possibly would feel unsafe or sexually harassed makes me really sad to think that it's affecting this many people. And so that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important we do trainings like this today, because we do want to reduce that number. And also, it's very likely that we will interact with somebody in the workplace or will know somebody close to us in the workplace who is going to possibly experience this. And we want to make sure we know what to do, we know what to look out for, and we know how to help them as well. So I know that you guys are probably like, oh my gosh, I have to do this training every year. It sucks, blah, 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 blah. But regardless of that, it is really important. And I just want to make sure that everyone knows how to be safe. And I do try to update this every year so it's a little less boring. I even put in cute pictures of dogs. So, dog pictures always seem to help. So we're gonna get through this together. All right. So who does harassment affect? What we do know is that harassment affects everybody. It can affect anyone. It doesn't matter if it is someone young, someone old. It doesn't matter the color of someone's skin. It doesn't matter the language they speak. It doesn't matter if they're a man, a woman, LGBTQI plus. Anybody can experience harassment. Okay, I think sometimes what people believe is that only women experience harassment at the hands of men, or that it's only young people experiencing it at the hands of older people, et cetera, et cetera. There's all of these stereotypes about who experiences harassment. And those things aren't true. It could happen that way, but typically what we see is that harassment could affect anybody. It doesn't matter their gender, their age, their race, anything like that. Harassment can affect anyone. Something we do know, though, is that harassment is typically born out of power differentials. And so power differentials can look a bit broader than just like a boss to someone they supervise. I think that's the most common power differential we think of. But also maybe it's someone who's been at the job longer than you. Maybe it's someone who is older than you. Maybe it's someone who has white privilege over someone else. Maybe it's someone who is the boss's favorite. Something like that. There's a whole lot of different power differentials out there that could affect how harassment happens or if harassment does happen. And we also know that marginalized populations typically experience harassment at higher rates and they have more difficulties reporting because of fear of retaliation. And lastly, we also know that intersecting identities does play a role in this. So I don't know how many people in here have some sort of social work, sociology, psychology background. But if you have not heard of intersectionality, what that term means, I think it's important for understanding that for what the roles are of oppression. So there's another video. We're going to see if it pops up. If it doesn't, again, you guys are so lucky to have what some would call an expert in this because I can explain it. Yep, error. I thought that might happen. So I will explain it myself. So intersectionality is a term that was coined by scholar Kimberly Crenshaw. Kimberly Crenshaw is a lawyer, and what she did is she was basically looking at a case of workplace, I guess, racism. There was a company who they were with the EEOC discriminating against hiring Black women. And so Kimberly Crenshaw took this to a judge and said, this workplace is not following EEOC guidelines. It is not hiring Black women. And the judge threw it out because the judge said, well, they're hiring Black men, so they're hiring Black people, and they're hiring women. They're only hiring white women, but they're hiring women, so it's not an EEOC complaint. Well, what Kimberly Crenshaw liked, what she identified with intersectionality, is that different forms of oppression can compound on each other and almost make completely new forms of what oppression can look like. So, laws that are out there to protect people of color tend to be from the lens of Black men. And laws that are out there to protect women tend to be from the lens of white women. Therefore, those laws are not necessarily protecting or taking into consideration women of color. And so it's this idea that different forms of oppression actually compound on each other and can make oppression kind of look a little bit different and harder to spot. And we just need to make sure that we're amplifying the voices of individuals with different intersecting identities. So that is something that is important to think about when we're thinking about harassment in the workplace, because harassment in the workplace is a form of oppression. And we need to think about those with intersecting identities. Are our reporting policies and procedures taking them into consideration? Are different individuals with different intersecting identities at the table to help discuss these things and help with company culture? So these are all different things that we need to make sure that we are taking into consideration. That way, we are making sure that we have the whole picture and we're making sure that we are trying to take the anti-harassment to all individuals and not just from the lens of white women, basically, which is what kind of the sexual harassment lens has been for a really long time. But we want to make sure that everybody is being protected and that everybody has a chance to report and help with the company culture behind that. Don't forget if you have any Q&As, we will save some time at the end for that, and there's like a Q&A chat that you can use. So I just want to make sure that anyone who hopped in after that explanation knows that you can throw in some Q&As. I typically do get some Q&As on this piece in particular, so if you do have questions on this, you're very welcome to throw them in the chat. Okay. Now, we're going to hop into the Illinois and federal laws against sexual harassment. So, I'm going to read this to you. Again, the kind of reading comprehension level of laws is not very user-friendly. The average reading level in the United States is like an 8th grade reading level, and they are just throwing all kinds of crazy stuff and words in these laws. So I'm going to read it because I have to, but we are going to dive into what it actually means and what that actually looks like in the workplace. So if you're just like, oh my gosh, that was a lot of words and it goes over your head, don't worry. I promise I will explain it. So, sexual harassment is any unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, or conduct of a sexual nature when submission to such conduct is explicitly or implicitly made a term or condition of employment, submission to or rejection of such conduct is used as the basis for making decisions about your employment, or such conduct interferes with your job performance or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. Again, that's a lot of words, just a lot of things. And also sometimes it's hard to think of examples of some of these things because this is a very, I guess I would say like a wide encompassing law. It's kind of an umbrella term where it's like, oh, it could mean all these different things. So I do have some categories I'll show you about what these different things can look like, and some general categories on what these each of these bullet points actually is. Okay, so there's two main types of sexual harassment in the workplace, like two main categories. And the first one, which is I think the one people think of most off the top of their heads, it's the one we see in TV show and movies the most. It's actually less common than the second one, but we hear about this one more. This is called quid pro quo, which literally in Latin translates to this for that. Um, and this is a request for sexual favor in exchange for employment, advancement, or to avoid something negative. And this can be explicitly or implicitly. So this could be a request for a sexual favor for employment. Maybe this person wants a job. Maybe this person needs a promotion. Maybe this person needs more work hours. And so basically, the supervisor says to this person, I will give you the promotion. I will give you the job. I will give you more work hours if you do this sexual favor for me. So that's kind of that exchange for advancement or employment. That would be that quid pro quo request. Or it also could be to avoid something negative. So maybe that supervisor or boss says, I need this sexual favor in order to not fire you. I need this sexual favor or I'm going to cut your hours. I need this sexual favor or I'm going to make you do all the stocking with no help every week and you have to stock all the boxes with no help. So it could be again to avoid something negative. Um, and this could be explicitly where the person says, I want this sexual favor for this. That's explicit. Or it could be implicitly, where maybe the person implies heavily that they want some kind of sexual favor in order to give them something or not, or to avoid something negative. So it could look like someone, if they explicitly said, I want this sexual favor to give you the promotion. Implicitly could look like the person saying, well, I would give you the promotion, but, I need you to prove to me somehow that you're loyal to me and this company. And I just, you could come up with it, but I need to know you're loyal to me. And I need to know that you need to show me how bad you want this position. And so I didn't explicitly say, I want this sexual favor for this promotion, but I heavily implied that I wanted some kind of sexual favor or some kind of thing for that person to prove their loyalty. Okay. So that is something that whether it is explicitly or implicitly, whether it is for advancement or to avoid something negative, regardless, quid pro quo sexual harassment is not okay. Something I get a question on a lot with this type and the next type is that technically to be able to make a report, you do have to tell the person no or to stop at least one time. So if this person does do some kind of quid pro quo harassment, you say no, and then you can go and report them, or you say you have to tell them to stop or that that's not okay, and then you can go report them. I don't love that that is how it is. I think that's not very survivor centered. You are able to designate someone else to say no, though. So if you are uncomfortable saying no to that person, you don't feel safe, it is okay if you go talk to a supervisor and have them kind of relay that message for you, or you do it together. So it could be someone else relaying the message. But if you are going to report sexual harassment to like the government, that's when you would need to say no or stop at least one time. I do hate that that is the rule, but that is the rule. Okay. Here's the second main type. And this has a lot of little subcategories to it, so I apologize if you thought we only had two categories. We have two main categories, and this one has a lot of little subcategories, so yay. This second one is called hostile work environment. And this one is actually more common than quid pro quo, but it is a little bit harder to prove and it's a little bit, I guess a little bit more nuanced, a little bit less black and white, kind of like quid pro quo. So this is unwanted sexual conduct, even without the quid pro quo threat, that creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. Again, that can be a little bit kind of in the gray area of like, what does that mean? What does intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment mean? What does that look like? So again, I have some subcategories coming up that's going to help us kind of understand that a bit better. Okay, so a hostile work environment. So there's three kind of main categories under that. The first one is unwanted sexual attention. So this is attention of a sexual nature that is unwanted and non-consensual. So what I'm going to say first about this one is that it's important that you look at your company's kind of policies and procedures around workplace relationships. If you have a workplace that like says that you can't have workplace relationships, or if you have some kind of your workplace may have no policies on that. You may be in such a small workplace that that's not something that is like formally written, et cetera, et cetera. If you're not sure too, I would always recommend talking to a supervisor and being like, hey, like I'm possibly pursuing interest of this person. Like, is there a formal policy or procedure on this? So that's something I always recommend. But just flirting in the workplace or just like asking someone out you work with, anything like that, that in and of itself is not a problem. What becomes a problem of that though is if someone, the person you're pursuing, does not want that attention and it's non-consensual. So, even if you think that you're flirting and, you're like, I didn't mean to offend them or upset them, it's really important that you make sure you have consent in those situations and that person actually is okay with that flirting or asking out or anything like that. Because if it is unwelcome or unwanted, it could become a sexual harassment claim. The other piece to this is that even third parties who have to be there, um, can also consider it a hostile work environment. So let's say you and a coworker are flirting, whatever, right? It's okay with your workplace policies. You two are dating, you're flirting in the workplace, whatever, which I don't recommend doing that in the workplace anyways, but you do you. And a third coworker walks by. Even if that third coworker walking by is uncomfortable by the flirting of the other two people, that can still be considered a hostile work environment because they're being subjected to that behavior when they don't want to be. It's not consensual for them to be around that. So even third parties walking by, I like to say that also like this could be maybe you and your coworker have like a really like almost friendship based relationship. Maybe you and your coworker are in the kitchen or the break room and you make a sexual joke or something with that coworker. If a third person walks into the kitchen or the break room and they hear that joke and they feel uncomfortable, that could be considered a hostile work environment. Again, they would need to tell you guys like at least once, like, hey, we don't do that here, or hey, I'm not comfortable with that, or a supervisor would need to tell you. But still, I would just say like save those jokes and all of that for outside of work. Um, I did have someone ask me about being on and off work property, like what that looks like. So if you're at a work function, you're on the clock. Let's say, for me right now, I'm teaching at Sandwich Middle School. Other than this, I'm in one of their rooms somewhere. I'm teaching middle schoolers today. This isn't my place of work. I do not work here, but I was sent here due to work and I am on the clock. If I was sexually harassed here, that would still count under workplace sexual harassment because I am at a place working and doing my job. Now, let's say you and all your coworkers say, hey, let's go out for drinks after work on Friday, and you go out to El Jimador or whatever and get tacos and drinks. I don't know. You are off the clock. You are outside the work walls. If something were to happen there, that would not be considered sexual harassment in the workplace. Would it be considered sexual harassment in general? Yes. And you can get help from Safe Passage or talk to somebody about that. And even you could even talk to your supervisor about that if you feel the need. But that would not constitute a sexual harassment workplace claim because it did not happen on the clock or within like the building walls. Okay. The other thing I like to add about this, another caveat, is that it could also be something that comes from a third party vendor. So let's say you have someone who, I guess I'll use us as an example again. Safe Passage in some of our offices, we have like rugs, like walkways, so people don't slip. And we have a company that comes in every couple of months and switches them out to take them to clean and puts new rugs down. Well, let's say if that person came in and was changing out the rugs and said a sexual comment to somebody or something, that would still be considered sexual harassment in the workplace because you have to be subjected to that third party vendor because you're working and they're in your office. So even the UPS guy, the Amazon person, the FedEx girl, whoever, um, if they are delivering something for your business and they sexually harass you in some way, that is still considered sexual harassment in the workplace because you are subjected to that person. You have to be around that third party vendor. And then lastly, something I like to add is that it could happen digitally as well. So if people are harassing over like work email, Teams, Microsoft, whatever, Zoom, anything happening digitally as well also counts. So all of those things could fall under hostile work environment, sexual harassment. The second category of hostile work environment is sexist harassment. So these are sexist behaviors that are not necessarily sexual in nature. If you don't know what the definition of sexism is basically like not a hatred, but like a disliking of women and like also saying that men are better. It's like the patriarchy and all of that. So sometimes there are sexist behaviors that happen that are not necessarily sexual in nature, but it basically gives off the idea that men are better than women in the workplace, which is not true. And so if we only ask, like if we give women a gendered nickname, like if you are someone working in an office and you call all the women in the office honey or sweetie, that's not okay. If you basically make only the woman take notes in meetings, that's not okay. Everybody has to be able to take notes. So we cannot have sexist behaviors in the workplace. Um, and that is something that could be considered hostile work environment. The last one is gender policing, which is reinforcing traditional gender norms in the workplace. This is kind of similar to that sexist harassment. So something here could be assigning job by gender. So if you again make only the woman make coffee and take notes in the office, that's not okay. If you have only the guys carrying heavy boxes, and none of the girls have to, that's not okay. Unless, of course, there's a legitimate excuse. So, like, let's say, and this is something that I've talked with a nursing class about before, but they were saying that, well, is it bad that we only have the male nurses pushing the gurneys? And I said, well, yes, because if you all are able-bodied and able to do so, everybody equally should be pushing around the gurneys, right? Now it's different if you have, let's say we have a 60-something-year-old nurse. She had just had a hip replacement and she has a note from her doctor saying she can't lift more than 5 pounds. And then we have a male nurse who's like 26, healthy, no physical restrictions. Then yes, the male nurse is going to be pushing all the gurneys, but that's not because of gender. That's because the female nurse has a legitimate doctor's note and the male nurse does not. So that's more of like that legitimate reasoning behind assigning the job, and it is not assigning it by gender. The other thing about reinforcing traditional gender norms in the workplace, the big one is dress code. So most all businesses and companies have some kind of dress code. For safe passage, we have like you can't wear pajamas, you can't wear sweatpants, you can't wear ripped pants, ripped jeans. You gotta wear like professional business, we're business casual attire, right? Like that's our general um dress code. And some businesses have a dress code where, you can't wear open-toed shoes because it's not safe. But the second you start saying guys in the office can't wear dresses or skirts and girls in the office can't wear pants, that would be considered gender policing and part of a hostile work environment. Now, what you can say is that no one in the office can wear dresses. Maybe you work in like a factory facility and everyone has to wear tight fitting clothing because otherwise it would just get caught in machines, right? So then, yes, nobody would be allowed to wear a dress. It has to be something that applies to everyone. So if there's a guy in the workplace that has nail polish, you can't say to that one person, you can't wear nail polish. Everybody can't wear nail polish, or everybody can wear nail polish. You cannot assign those like dress codes based on gender. So it has to be kind of an all or nothing kind of thing. Um, so that is something to think about with gender policing. A couple key points here that I get questions on a lot. This is my face when someone says, "Oh, so I can't compliment anyone." There are people out there who kind of veil sexual harassment or disguise sexual harassment as a compliment. Just because someone is complimenting you, if it makes you feel uncomfortable, that is still not okay. And you can still tell them to stop. And also, I think that there is hopefully a clear difference to most of us between a compliment that is creepy and a compliment that is less creepy. Something that I actually learned this from someone the other day that they had a really good point on this, but I like to use action-based compliments as opposed to appearance-based compliments. So an appearance-based compliment would be like, "Oh, you look so nice today," or "Oh, your outfit looks nice," or "Your hair looks nice," right? That's appearance-based. That's how someone looks. It's better to use action-based compliments like, "Oh, you did a really good job on that report," or "Oh, I really appreciate how you talked to that person. You did a really good job with that customer." Or, "Oh, you're always so kind and nice, and I appreciate that you say good morning every morning." So you can do more compliments based on people's actions as opposed to appearance-based compliments if that is something that you're concerned about. But I think for a lot of us, we do have a pretty okay distinction between like an appearance-based compliment that we think would make someone feel good about themselves versus uncomfortable. So like, "Oh, your outfit looks so nice today." I would say that that's probably okay, as long as the person's comfortable with it. But if you go up to someone and say, "Oh my gosh, your body looks so good in that outfit today," ugh, a little creepy. So, some of us, it's good to understand those lines between compliments. I'm not saying you can't compliment anyone ever, but I am saying proceed with caution. This one. Don't have an inappropriate computer background. I don't know how many times. It's been a lot where like grown people are like, "Oh, can I have like an anime girl as my computer background with her boobs out?" No, no, you cannot. At home, sure. On your personal device, at home where no one else can see it, you do you. You do whatever you want to do. It's a free country. Do what you want. But when you're in the workplace and other people can see those things, or especially if it's a company computer, you cannot have inappropriate background screens. That is not okay. Or like if you have the sexy fireman calendar up in your office. No, you can't do that. Again, similar to the person being subjected as a third party if two people are flirting and it's like, "Well, I have to be here and now I'm being subjected to this." It's the same idea. If someone walks by your office or has to come into your office and sees some inappropriate poster or some inappropriate computer background, you have subjected them to that against their will. Like they didn't get that choice on having to come into your office for help, and now they're being subjected to a poster or something that makes them feel uncomfortable. So please, like, save that for home. Like, you do whatever you want at home, but don't have inappropriate computer backgrounds. Something I also like to add, we all got our little cell phone devices here. I pay for my cell phone. Safe Passage does not. That is my personal device. But the thing about that is if my phone, like it is now, is just sitting out on my desk face up, anybody could see it, and then it buzzes, and then my screen pops up and it has an inappropriate background, I've still now just officially subjected someone to seeing that. So just be careful even with your phone backgrounds, because if people are able to see that, even though it's your personal device, it's the same thing as if you brought in a poster. That's your personal poster, but now you've brought it into work for everyone to have to see. It's the same thing with your phone. So I do have to say, like, just be careful on all of that. Like, just don't do that. I have to say, I would just avoid that one. I wouldn't even say proceed with caution. I would just say don't do that. Okay, I'm gonna assume this video is not gonna work, so. All right, so if you are a manager or a supervisor on here or an HR person or whatever, where you are in charge of policies and procedures in any way, shape, or form, these are 6 kind of keys to having good sexual harassment policies. Every workplace, first of all, has to do this training, this kind of training once a year. And also, they have to have some kind of written policy or procedure on reporting. So, first, you're going to want a clear definition of harassment, of sexual harassment. So, you could literally copy and paste what I put on that Illinois and federal law slide if you want to. Some kind of clear definition of harassment. Um, Next, you're going to want some kind of explicit statement on zero tolerance. And basically, this can be like, this company has a zero tolerance policy on sexual harassment in the workplace, and these matters are taken very seriously. Boom, done. ChatGPT it, AI it, whatever you need to do, go on and just ask Google, hey, how do I write a zero tolerance policy on this? And they will tell you. Also, you're going to want multiple reporting avenues. So, something that I'll use Safe Passage as an example again. If we want to report sexual harassment, we can either report it to our direct supervisor or we can report it to any supervisor on the same level. So I'm a manager, so people I supervise could report to me, or maybe they're not comfortable with me knowing, or maybe I'm like close with the person they're reporting, or maybe I am the one harassing them. Who knows? Um, they are then able to report to the other 2 managers as well that we also have at Safe Passage. And for myself, I report to the executive director. Well, if I don't feel comfortable telling the executive director, then I can go to any other director. There's 4 more directors that I could go talk to on the same level if I want to report something. So it gives multiple reporting avenues, because what if it happens to be that one reporting person? Well, shoot, what do you do then? So even if it's only one other avenue, maybe you're at a really, really small company or business and it's like, okay, there's 4 of us. What are we going to do? At least give them one other option, right? Be like, okay, you could report to me, the owner of this business, or you could report to like my secondhand person or something. Or you can report to Safe Passage. You could even write that in there that you want people to talk to Safe Passage and we can help them make reports or whatever. Just some other option. You're going to want number 4, a thorough investigation and corrective action process. So it could be reasonably simple. What we have down for ours, I'm not going to quote this exactly right, but this is close to what we have for ours, is like, report the incident within 5 days, 5 business days. And then within 5 business days after that, the HR person and the supervisor it was reported to are going to conduct an investigation by talking to all involved parties and looking at all documents. Okay. Then after that, it says within the next 5 business days, after that, the executive director and the HR person, whoever, are going to talk with all of the affected parties. So that's the person who experienced the harassment and anyone else involved, including the perpetrator, and talk about possible resolutions. In the next 5 days after that, some resolution will come and be officially documented, whatever, whatever. And so that is like a really good, thorough investigation process. And then you can also put down like, these are some possible corrective actions that may take place also, etc., right? Because you don't know fully every situation ever, but you could put like termination, moving job positions, moving suspension, having to take some classes, moving like there's a lot of different, again, Google, really great place to be like, what are some possible remedies for sexual harassment? And it'll give you a list of different things. Like sometimes I've had people reach out to me before And this is another thing that you can do if you need, I'll put my email in the chat later. But something you can do is I've had businesses and Title IX offices and such reach out to me and say, hey, as part of this person's corrective action plan, we want them to take a 1 hour training specifically focusing on healthy relationships or specifically focusing on consent and flirting or specifically focusing on this. And part of their corrective action is taking like a 1 hour or 2 hour free class with me. And we talk about all those things and I teach on those things. That's another option. It's not always has to be, it doesn't always have to be termination immediately, but we do want to make sure that there's some kind of corrective action process that we're going through. Next up, number 5, protection against retaliation. You need to have a statement in there saying that like retaliation is also against the law. We do not tolerate retaliation, and this person can be protected from that. And then lastly, you can put in there like once a year we will attend the amazing, awesome safe passage presentation as our regular training and education. So putting all that in there protects the business, protects the organization against lawsuits. Okay. So if you want to be protected against possible lawsuits, I am not a lawyer. I am not giving legal advice here, but having policies and having that out there can protect you in the case of some lawsuits. Okay. Again, this is not legal advice. I am not a lawyer, but these are things that are written down on different websites and different research that says this is a really good way to have a good policy. Ways to report. There is internally and externally. What I will say, and this is my own opinion, you can take it and throw it in the trash. I don't care, that's fine. But my own personal opinion is I would start by reporting internally and then report externally if it is not being fixed internally how you want. That is because the government is slow. I know, shocker. I probably just blew all your minds with that one. Government is slow. And so sometimes when people do report sexual harassment workplace claims to the government, it can take 6 months to a year sometimes to get any kind of resolution. So if you go internally first, sometimes you can come to a resolution in a week. I mean, you heard my example, it was like 5 days, 5 days, 5 days, 5 days. That's less than a month. Even if we took the full amount of time, which usually with those things, people don't take the full amount of time. But even if we took the full amount of time, that's 20 business days. That is a month. So that's really not that much time compared to 6 months or a year. So I would just recommend start internally because you'll get a resolution probably quicker. Now, again, if you're not happy with that, or maybe you're not comfortable reporting internally, totally fine. Please do report though externally, just in general, report. That is so important. But you can call Safe Passage. We do help people. That's why I know sometimes it can take a long time because our legal advocacy department, for free, help people kind of make sexual harassment in the workplace claims. So if that is something you need, feel free to call us. There is also the EEOC Chicago district, which we are a part of. That is their phone number on there, which again, Ben is going to send you guys these slides, so don't feel like you have to like quickly write this all down. There's also the Illinois Sexual Harassment and Discrimination Hotline, so that is another place you can call to look into reporting. Okay, so before I hop off my little share screen here, and we do have a good 15 minutes for questions, if you guys are willing, if you can please take your phone, scan this little QR code. It takes less than 5 minutes. It's really, really quick. If you can please just let me know how I did. It's anonymous, so you be as honest as you want to. If you're like, this lady sucked, you go. There's a comment section. Hopefully that's not what you feel. But I do use these surveys to help me do better in the future. Or if you guys have topics you'd like to see in the future or things that you want to know more about, you can always put that in there. So please, if you can just take a couple seconds to scan this, it really takes like 2 minutes to do it. I'll leave this up for another minute and then I will stop sharing so I can help answer some questions. So if you have not scanned it, please scan it now. And I'm going to drink a little soda because my voice is getting a little raw here. If you
Thanks,
guys have
Beth.
not tried, yeah.
Yeah, and we do have a couple of questions, but I also wanted to offer to you, I pulled up your presentation from July and I have some links to some of the videos that were included there. Do you, is there one that you really want to feature and you pull it up or okay.
It's
So
okay.
if you want to send me those links of the those that you did include, because with them being embedded, it looks like that was the challenge there. I can include that in my follow-up email to our attendees.
Yeah, I'll send those in the email to you with the presentation. Yeah, because if you guys go back and watch the videos later, they're still relevant and important. So
Yep. Yep. Okay, so we have a question here in the chat that says, can you explain how clients or customers harassing staff should be handled by an employee? I'm
that
sorry,
is a
an employer.
that's a great point. I actually was going to bring that up and then forgot. So thank you, whoever put that in there. That's a question I get a lot, actually. So technically, customers, clients, um, are not under the sexual harassment workplace like law. So what my recommendation is to, again, the internet's a wonderful place that can help too, but what I like to do is that you could make sure that you have kind of a procedure written down about what somebody can do. So sometimes what we like to recommend is that you have some kind of procedure about how to bring some kind of manager, supervisor, or even just another staff member over. We do know that like when one person is harassed on their own, that can be a little bit scarier and harder to handle than if another person is there and helping them. Or sometimes, if this is a longer standing client or customer, switching them to a different person. And it's okay to have honest conversations with people sometimes and being like, "Hey, we're switching you over to this person. There were some boundary issues, and so we just want to make sure that everything is like staying safe." Or again, even if you don't feel comfortable, maybe this is a paying customer and you're like, "I don't want to lose them." You could even make up an excuse and just say, "Oh, well, this person had way too many clients on their caseload, so we're moving you to someone else." So that way you get all of the time that you need. We have had that happen where we had a client harassing like a case manager in our shelter. And basically what we did is it wasn't like very explicit. It was more like implicit and just kind of making that staff member uncomfortable. And so what we did is we moved that person to a different case manager, and that seemed to work well. Now, if you have really explicit kind of harassment going on from a customer or a client, I would say that terminating that client or possibly terminating like doing service with that customer would be something that I would put on the table possibly. Now, if you want to give that person another chance and be like, "Hey, let's have a conversation and talk about the issues here." If you want to continue being a customer, if you want to continue being a client, we need to have these really clear boundaries and just setting really clear boundaries and expectations. Um, and then, yeah, maybe they can continue. But if this is something where this person, even after like talking to them, is not being respectful or listening to boundaries and is having really explicit harassment issues, that's not worth losing a lot of good staff. Even if it's a really good paying customer, it's not worth the cost of turnover. Turnover is really, really expensive. Um, so if you're thinking about the bottom line, the dollars, turnover is super expensive. Not only is it just wrong, like I want to make sure that we're like being kind to everybody and everyone does feel safe. It's wrong to like subject someone to that for the money, but also if you're thinking about the bottom dollar, like turnover is really expensive. So
That same attendee has a follow-up question, clarifying question saying, isn't the employer still liable for the behavior their staff is subject to, though, from an employment liabilities standpoint?
that's a really good question. I am not a lawyer. It's possible that if the person is being subjected to that behavior as a condition of their employment, that that could be an issue. Again, having written policies and procedures around these things really protects employers. I do know that. I would say that if you have like specific concerns about like really specific examples, or maybe this is something that happens a lot, I would recommend that you talk to an HR lawyer about that because you may then need to have some really specifically written policies and procedures around these things to help protect the employer. Um, so that is something that I would do a little bit more research on, but having written policies and procedures is a really, really good way to protect the employer because it showed that the employer took initiative and was trying to protect the employees.
Thanks for the question and thanks for that explanation, Beth. I do have two more that have come in. If anyone else has questions, you can send them directly to me or use chat or Q&A. But this is interesting too. It says, from your perspective, working directly with survivors, what are the most common misconceptions organizations or employees have about what qualifies as sexual harassment under Illinois law?
That's a really good one. So yeah, I think a really common misconception is that let me think about that one for a second because there's a few. Um, I think a really common misconception is that people just kind of need to get over it and it's a normal part of a working environment. Like a lot of people think that like having sexual jokes around, or people who talk about their sex lives, or like people who are making jokes about sex around them, or things like that casual kind of like locker room kind of banter talk, but in the workplace, that you have to deal with that. And that is okay. And that's like a condition of working a job with other people. That's something I hear a lot that people are like really uncomfortable about some of that stuff, and it makes them like try to they're feeling like they have to avoid the break room or that they have to avoid certain coworkers because they don't want to feel uncomfy like that all the time. And that actually is sexual harassment, and they actually don't have to put up with that. And so a lot of people, the first time they hear that, they're like, wait a minute, like, I don't have to put up with that? Like, I don't have to experience that in the workplace? Yeah, you don't have to put up with that. So I think that is something that people get confused about and like some common misconceptions. Another common misconception is that reporting is a bad thing and hurts the business, when actually so many studies have shown that reporting sexual harassment actually helps the business and is a good thing. It's a positive thing. Because, again, I mentioned turnover is really expensive. It's really expensive to train new people, look for new people, sign up all the new benefits and everything. It's an expensive process. And also, like, liability costs and claims if somebody is being harassed. So reporting harassment's a good thing because we don't want problem people. We don't want problem behaviors at organizations. So they've actually done a lot of studies that like reporting harassment actually helps a business save money than if people didn't and it kept happening. So.
Okay, the last question that I've received is asking this through the lens of a smaller organization. So, what are the most common warning signs of sexual harassment that small businesses should watch for, especially in close-knit or informal workplaces?
Yeah, I think that's something that are some warning signs is if somebody is kind of avoiding certain like interactions or places. Again, if there is someone where you're a really close-knit workplace, maybe there's four of you and you all work together in like one office and there's like four cubes and you got one little break room kitchen or something, and you notice that there's one person who like is really avoiding going into the break room, or one person who's really avoiding joining conversations with certain people. Like if you notice someone who kind of recedes and they didn't used to be like that or they didn't start that way and then they start kind of slowly receding, that could be a sign that someone's uncomfortable. I think the biggest thing and the biggest like thing that I can say for small organizations, especially when you have a really tight-knit group, is communication about boundaries and consent. Because it never hurts to like check in with someone and be like, hey, I know I made that joke earlier and I tend to kind of joke around with you. Just check it in. Is that something you're still comfortable with? Because if not, totally fine. I just want to check in with you. And it doesn't have to be this huge, awkward debacle, right? It can just be a quick check in, like, hey, just making sure that that was still okay. Because the point when we have a problem is when we don't have consent and when we have unwelcome behavior. Now, if you have four of you and you all make sexual jokes together and talk about your sexual conquests and whatever at the office, that's not a problem in and of itself. It's not. It's not against the law. It's not a problem. but everyone has to be on board with it and everyone needs to be comfortable and okay with it. So I would say if you notice someone receding and they didn't before, or someone who's avoiding certain interactions and they didn't before, check in with them, or just in general, check in with everybody. Hey, is everyone still like, I know that we're kind of a casual workplace. I know we talk really casually, but is everyone still comfortable? I would say do it on an individual basis, not in a group setting, because group think everyone's going to be like, ugh. So I would just say check-ins are good too.
Okay, Beth, anything else you'd like to add?
I'm going to put my email in the chat, and if you guys ever need any other presentations, or again, if you need help with a resolution process, I am confidential, so I'm not gonna like leak anybody's business about stuff going on. Like I said, I've done things for different like offices and different businesses. So or if you just want more informations about things, I am free. So I love helping and I love interacting with y'all. So you're welcome to email me anytime. But thank you, Ben, for having me again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Beth, and thanks to everyone who attended today. As a quick reminder, you'll receive two follow-up emails from us, one with the recording and slides, and another with your certificate of participation if you attended this live today. Be sure to check your spam or junk folders because sometimes we end up in those, especially when we're sending a mass email to a large group like this. For those of you who are representing nonprofit organizations, you can visit dcnp.org for upcoming opportunities. We just launched our 2026 membership drive, and you can renew or become a DCNP member on the website. Thanks again to the chambers who partnered on this event and to all who attended. And once more, a big thank you goes to Beth Gagnon for sharing her time and expertise with all of us today. Take care, everybody, and happy holidays.